thought for the day. Motivation gets you going, but discipline keeps you growing.
Welcome to 7 Minutes for Yourself. I'm Christina Aina, and I'm so glad you've joined me for what I believe will be 7 of the most enriching minutes of your day. Let's take this time to reconnect with ourselves and improve our well-being.
In today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself, we're going to be discussing some tips to communicate more assertively. Have a listen.
First, many people communicate passively. That's the first type we'll talk about. This means they essentially avoid expressing themselves. They have something that's on their mind, but they don't say it. And the trouble with this is that other people cannot read our minds. And that means there's a very low likelihood that we're going to get our needs met if we don't talk clearly about what they are in the first place. A passive communicator is likely to quietly accept other people's positions. They'll say to themselves, well, I'll just let the other person have their way. But over time, it becomes a pattern. Driving forces behind passive communication could be fear, a desire to avoid conflict, or just a lack of confidence to speak up. Next, aggressive communication is dominating. People who communicate aggressively do a lot of blaming, attacking, and finger pointing. They'll say things like, it's all your fault, or you're an awful person. They're really pushy with their views, and they want to be in control of the situation. I used to work with a really aggressive communicator. They used lots of you language, and they escalated conversations. You. This person would cut people off in mid-sentence, used a frustrated or angry tone. They waved their arms all over the place as they talked. They had a collection of tactics they used to dominate other people. That brings us to assertive communication, which is direct and respectful. A driving force behind this is the value of mutual respect. That's a theme. The assertive communicator is going to say what's on their mind really clearly, but they also respect the opinions of others. Assertive communication means you state your preference, but you're not attempting to silence or control others. Instead of you language, like aggressive communicators, assertive communicators use what we call I language. So instead of saying you are causing the delay, they say I'm concerned about the delay. In other words, they own their perspective. We'll talk more about how to communicate assertively in a couple of moments. The last type is passive-aggressive, which means the communicator doesn't speak up directly about their feelings. They let their anger and aggressiveness simmer just below the boiling point, and then they let it out in strange ways or maybe act like the victim who has no agency as they express themselves. The question is, why then is assertive communication the best approach for you? Well, it's the best approach because in contrast, if you are aggressive or passive-aggressive, people will be distracted by how you express yourself and they won't be able to hear what's really beneath it. You're giving them two jobs, essentially. You're asking them to hear you, but you're making it difficult for them to do that because you're also giving them an unhelpful communication style to react to. Assertive communication communicates clearly and respectfully, but without the emotional noise. And that means your message is more likely to hit its mark. Assertive communicators are much more likely in the end to be heard. First, make sure that you are genuinely calm and under control before you start the conversation. If you still have any negative emotions simmering beneath the surface, they will leak through if you rush it. One way to make sure you're calm enough is to sleep on it and wait another 24 hours. I often have a good night's sleep right before an important conversation, and it really does help me stay composed. I've never regretted waiting another 24 hours to talk. Use I language. I language literally means focusing on your thoughts and feelings by phrasing your point of view with the word I instead of you. I language doesn't solve every problem, but it's one really helpful tool to start conversations on the right foot. Instead of saying, you're giving me too much work, you would say, I'm feeling overwhelmed by the amount of work I have. Instead of, you're ignoring my concerns, say, I'm not feeling my concerns are being heard yet. I language allows the other person to hear your concern without feeling like they have to defend themselves. It positions the other person as a potentially helpful person who can then take a step toward you rather than positioning them as a potential enemy. And make sure that you're not trying to sneak any you language in there at all. Fourth, be a good listener. Once you've said your piece, hear them out. Let them tell their story. This means all the basic things that we expect with good listening, like maintaining eye contact when you listen and when you talk, maintain supportive, comfortable facial expressions as you listen. It means asking relevant questions with a genuine motivation to understand where they're coming from. Good listening provides enough conversational space to let them say what's on their mind. Good listening demonstrates that theme of mutual respect that we've been talking about. Another benefit is they are more likely to reciprocate and attempt to listen well to you. Listening well is not just professional, it's also classy. It communicates honor and respect. And remember, you can't control them or make them listen to you, but you can set the right tone by being a good listener and leading by example. Listening patiently is also important. Sometimes you'll hear something and you'll be tempted to immediately jump in with your reaction. It's a much better idea to listen carefully, ask a few questions to make sure you fully understand the other person before you react.
That concludes today's episode of 7 Minutes for Yourself. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Today and every day with your kiddo is a gift. Enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.